A cordial welcome to the students of BA, BSc and BCom first year. So in the previous video, we have learned a curb in the sky part 1. So today we are going to continue the lesson The Curb in the Sky, which is written by James Thurber, and we are going to finish the lesson today. So, The Curb in the Sky, which is written by James Thurber. So, you can see on the slide The Curb in the Sky, part 2. So, I am R. Sucharita, Government Degree College, Khairatabad, Hyderabad, from the Department of English. So, The Curb in the Sky, part 2. Anyway, when we got to Fairview, Charlie would go on, but today would stop him. Was it Fairview that day, darling? She would ask. Dorothy often interrupted Charlie by asking him if he were right instead of telling him that he was wrong. But it amounted to the same thing, for if he would reply, Yes, I'm sure it was Fairview, she would say, But it wasn't, darling, and then go on with the story herself. She called everybody that she differed from darling. So, anyway, when we got to Fairview, now Charlie, he was going on with his conversation. So, as Charlie was speaking something else and as he was doing the conversation, as we know that the habit or the character of this Dorothy is she always interrupts in other speakings and she'll try to correct their mistakes, and not only correcting the mistakes but she tries to finish the sentences. All this we have seen in the previous video, that is part 1. But Dorothy would help him. Was it Fairview that day, darling? This is the way she's questioning Charlie again. Was it Fairview that day, darling? She would ask. Dorothy often interrupted Charlie by asking him if he were right. Are you right? Was it Fairview that day? Again, she is trying to point out his mistakes. So instead of telling that he was wrong, so she was telling that, was it Fairview that day, darling? So she's not directly hinting him here, but indirectly she was poking him. But it amounted to the same thing, that again she was digging him. So for if he would reply, Yes, I'm sure it was Fairview, she would say, But it wasn't, darling. So when Charlie replies that, Yes, I'm sure it was Fairview, then again she would say, But it wasn't Fairview, darling. That is the way again she is interrupting him, and then go on with the story herself. Like that, she'll be going on with the story which he told him. So she called everybody that she differed from darling. So once or twice when I called on them or they called on me, Dorothy would let Charlie get almost to the climax of some interesting account of a happening, and then like a tackler from behind throw him just as he was about to cross the goal line. There is nothing in life more shocking to the nerves and to the mind than this. Some husbands will sit back amiably, almost as it seems proudly, when their wives interrupt and let them go on with the story. But these are beaten husbands. Charlie did not become beaten at the end of the second year of their marriage. When you visit the Dashlers, Charlie would begin some outlandish story about a dream he had had, knowing that Dorothy could not correct him on his own dreams. They became the only life that he had that was his own. So once or twice when I called on them or they called on me. Dorothy would let Charlie get almost to the climax of some interesting account of a happening and then, like a tackler from behind. So, once or twice, when I called on them or they called on him, these sentences are spoken by our author, that is James Thurber. So when he called or they called, Dorothy would let Charlie get almost to the climax. So you know what is climax? That is the decisive moment of the story of some interesting account of a happening, and then, like a tackler again from behind, she would point out his mistakes, throw him just as he was about to cross the goal line. So when he was explaining something, when he was about to cross the goal line, when he was about to reach the goal line, this woman Dorothy, she would tackle him from behind. So this is the habit of her. So there is nothing in life more shocking to the nerves and to the mind than this. So this is more shocking to the nerves and to the mind also. Some husbands, they will sit back amiably, that is almost friendly, almost as it seems proudly, when their wives, when they are interrupting them, they feel proud and let them go on with the story. But such husbands, they are called as beaten husbands, says James Thurber here. So Charlie did not become beaten here. At the end of the second year of their marriage, when you visited the Dashlers, Charlie would begin some outlandish story. Now, Charlie, because if he speaks about or if he narrates about the stories of the previous or the known ones, there is a chance for Dorothy to tackle, like a tackler from behind, she'll be tackling him. So that is why he started some outlandish story. That means some strange story he started about a dream, the dream which he had, knowing that Dorothy could not correct. Now, because this is a dream and this is an outlandish story or a strange story, so, thinking this or keeping this in mind, Charlie thought that now Dorothy cannot correct her on his, because he is narrating on his own dream. So they became the only life that he had, that was his own. I thought I was running an airplane. Now he started his dream, that is the story, that is the outlandish story or the strange dream which he got. He started narrating his dream. Now, this para, it tells us the dream of Charlie, and he was here narrating about that outlandish story. I thought I was running an airplane, he would say, made out of telephone wires and pieces of old leather. I was trying to make it fly to the moon, taking off from my bedroom. About halfway up to the moon, however, a man who looked like Santa Claus, only he was dressed in the uniform of a customs officer, waved at me to stop. He was in a plane made of telephone wires too, so I pulled over to a cloud. Here, he said to me, you can't go to the moon if you are the man who invented these wedding cookies. Then he showed me a cookie in the shape of a man and woman being married, made of duff and fastened firmly to a round, crisp cookie base. So he would go on. I thought I was running an airplane, he would say. Now, this Charlie, I told you that he is narrating his story and he was telling about his interesting dream here. So, in the dream, he was running an airplane. So, you know what is an airplane? He would say, and that airplane, it seems, it was made out of telephone wires and pieces of old leather. This you have to remember. So, this is completely Charlie's dream, and he is narrating about his dream here. And here he was running an airplane, and that airplane, it is made of telephone wires and pieces of old leather. I was trying to make it fly to the moon. So what is he doing? He is making it to fly to the moon, taking off from my bedroom, he says, from his bedroom in his airplane. Now he is flying, and that airplane, it is made of telephone wires and pieces of old leather. So about halfway up to the moon, he went into the sky. Now he is halfway up to the moon, however, a man who looked like Santa Claus. So there he saw a man, and that man, he resembles Santa Claus. So you know who is a Santa Claus, especially when the Christmas time is going on. We see so many pictures of this Santa Claus. So one who give gifts to the children is called as Santa Claus. So this he saw this Santa Claus halfway up to the moon, a man who looked like Santa Claus. And this Santa Claus, he was dressed in the uniform of a customs officer. And what did this Santa Claus do? He was waving at Charlie. He was waving at me to stop, he says. The Santa Claus, he was waving to stop Charlie. So he was in a plan made of telephone wires too. And how is this Santa Claus? His is also made of telephone wires. So I pulled over to a cloud. So now, when he was narrating this, he was telling that he was pulling over to a cloud here. He said to me, "You can't go to the moon." So I pulled over to the cloud. So Charlie, he pulled over to the cloud. And what did this Santa Claus tell? You can't go to the moon if you are the man who invented these wedding cookies. Now I have wedding cookies with you. So if you are the man who invented this wedding cookies, then you cannot go to the moon. So these were the lines spoken by that person, Santa Claus. So then he showed me a cookie in the shape of a man and woman. And how are those wedding cookies? The when this person, that is Santa Claus, when he showed the wedding cookies, that wedding cookie, it is in the shape of a man and a woman being married. So that is the sorry so that is the picture of these wedding cookies made of duff. And how are they made? They are made of duff, they are made of dough, and they are fastened firmly to a round crisp cookie base. So you can see all these crisp cookies in the bakery. So please imagine them. So he would go on. So like that, this person, that is Santa Claus, he was narrating about those wedding cookies, and he was showing those crispy wedding cookies which were made of dough, and they were fastened. So, like that, any psychiatrist will tell you that at the end of the way Charlie was going lies madness in the form of monomania. You can't live in a fantastic dream world night in and night out, and then day in and day out, and remain sane. The substance began to die slowly out of Charlie's life, and he began to live entirely in shadow. And since monomania of this sort is likely to lead in the end to the reiteration of one particular story, Charlie's invention began to grow thin, and he eventually took to telling over and over again the first dream he had ever described, the story of his curious flight toward the moon in an airplane made of telephone wires. It was extremely painful. It saddened us all. So, this is the imagination picture of Dorothy and Charlie. You can imagine them to be like this. Actually, they are not, but this is just an imaginary pic. Okay. So, any psychiatrist, you know who is a psychiatrist? A psychiatrist is a medical practitioner who is specializing in the diagnosis and treatment of mental illness. One who treats mental illness is called as a psychiatrist. So, any psychiatrist will tell you that at the end of the way Charlie was going lies madness in the form of monomania. So, I told you in the meanings what is monomania. So, what is monomania? Too much interest in or for one thing. If you are interested in one thing, then that is called as monomania. So, now we can clearly observe the madness that is Charlie was undergoing. That is in the form of monomania. Any psychiatrist also can tell you what is the status of this Charlie, that is mentally. So you can't live in a fantastic dream world, night in and now night out. We cannot live in this fantastic. Okay, we cannot live in the fantastic day world. So, like that, day in and day out, it is very difficult to live in this fantastic dream world and remain sane. It is very difficult to remain sane, that is perfectly well mentally. So, the substance began to die slowly out of Charlie's life, and he began to live entirely in shadow. Poor Charlie. So, the substance which was in him that began to die slowly out of his life, and he began to live entirely in shadow. And since monomania of this sort is like to lead in the end to the reiteration of one particular story, Charlie's invention. So, what happened? It led to one particular story, and we know that particular story is that about his dream about those airplanes which are made of telephone wires and the old pieces of leather. And he was again repeating and repeating the same particular story. So Charlie's invention began to grow thin, and he eventually took to telling over and over again, not once or twice. Again and again, he is repeating the same story. Poor Charlie, he was repeating about the dream of the Santa Claus and the that is about that he was going with his airplane, which was made with telephone wires and old pieces of leather. So, all these we have seen previously. So, like that, he was telling over and over again the first dream he had ever described, the story of his curious flight. So, this is his curious flight towards the moon in an airplane which was made of telephone wires. It was extremely painful for the people to listen the story again and again, and it saddened us all, says James Thurber. So Charlie's friends and the author James Thurber, they were all very much, they felt very sad, and he utters this statement that it saddened us all. So, after a month or two, Charlie finally had to be sent to an asylum. So, finally, in a month or two, now Charlie, he should be sent to an asylum. I told you what is an asylum. So, it is a hospital for the mentally sick people to be cured there. So that is called as asylum. And they made a decision that he should be sent to an asylum. So I went out of town when they asked him away, but Joe Fulls, who went with him, wrote me about it. He seemed to like it up here right away. Joe wrote, he's calmer and his eyes look better. Charlie had developed a wild, hunted look. Of course, concluded Joe, he's finally got away from that woman. So after a month or two, they thought that finally he had to be sent to an asylum. And what did James do? I went out of town when they took him away. So when they took him away, he went out of the town. But Joe Fulls, who went with him. So the Joe Fulls is another friend of Charlie. So he went along with whom? With Charlie, who went with him, and he wrote to James Thurber. He wrote me about it, he says. He seemed to like it up here right away. So Joe wrote, he's calmer and his eyes look better. So after he has taken him to the asylum, now Joe has written to James that now Charles' eyes they are calmer and his eyes are looking better. So Charlie had developed a wild hunted look. So when you see Charlie and when you see his looks, they have developed to a wild hunted look. So of course, concluded Joe, he's finally got away from that woman. Okay. Joe, he writes that finally he got away from that woman, and now he is in that asylum, and then he is calmer and his eyes look better. So this is the information from Joe to the author James. So it was a couple of weeks later that I drove up to the asylum to see Charlie. He was lying on a cot on a big screened in porch, looked wan and thin. Dorothy was sitting on a chair beside his bed, bright eyed and eager. I was somehow surprised to see her there, having figured that Charlie had at least one sanctuary from his wife. He looked quite mad. He began at once to tell me the story of his trip to the moon. He got to the part where the man who looked like Santa Claus waved at him to stop. He was in a plane made of telephone wires too, said Charlie. So I pulled over to the curb. So it was a couple of weeks later that I drove up to the asylum to see Charlie. So after a couple of weeks, James he went to that asylum in order to see his friend Charlie as how he is. So he was lying on a cot. So how was Charlie? He was nicely sleeping. He was lying on the cot and he is on a big screened in porch. So we have seen in the previous video the big screened in porch, that is the veranda. And then how he was looking, that Charlie, how was his face looking? He was looking wan and thin. Wan means he was very faint and he was very weak and he was looking very thin. So Dorothy was sitting on a chair beside his bed. And where was Dorothy? She was sitting beside a chair near his bed. This lady again, she came to her husband there and she was sitting on a chair. She was bright eyed and she was eager. She was, though all these circumstances happened, but even then she was bright eyed and she was eager. And how she was looking, you can see here. But Charlie, he was looking wan and thin. He was very weak and he was very thin. I was somehow surprised to see her there, having figured that Charlie had. So now James is telling, the author is telling that he was very much surprised to see Dorothy there, having figured that Charlie had at least one sanctuary from his wife. But she has come here to the asylum, and this that is James. He was thinking that at least he would one sanctuary from his wife here. So we have seen what is the meaning of sanctuary in this lesson especially. So sanctuary means it is a shelter from danger or hardship. A shelter from danger or hardship is called as. So now he is in danger, but still he couldn't get that sanctuary because Dorothy was sitting just beside him on the chair. So he looked quite mad. So, this is the position of that poor Charlie. He was looking mad, and he began at once to tell the story of his trip to the moon. Again, he started the same story, that is, the trip to the moon. Okay, so where the man who we can see here, he began at once to tell me the story of his trip to the moon. Now he was telling the story to James. He got to the part where the man who looked like Santa Claus waved at him to the top. So at the top, and again he is repeating the same story that he went with the help of the airplane, and that airplane, it was made of telephone wires and pieces of old leather. And there, to the trip of the moon, he saw a man who looked like Santa Claus, and that Santa Claus, he was waving at him to stop. He was in a plane made of telephone wires too, and now he is explaining the same story about whom? About that person, Santa Claus, and his airplane is also made of telephone wires, said Charlie. So I pulled over to the curb, he says again. I pulled over to the curb. So I told you what is curb. Curb is it is the edge of a footpath. Is called as curb. So no, you pulled over to a cloud, said Dorothy, because she is having the same old habit of interrupting. She didn't change, and she had the same character again. Again, here too in this asylum, she started correcting him that it is not pulling over to the curb, it is pulling over to a cloud. No, she says, said Dorothy. There aren't any curbs in the sky. There couldn't be. You pulled over to a cloud. So again, she started correcting him, saying that there are no curbs there, and there couldn't be, there are no curves at all in the sky. You pulled over to a cloud, she says again, at this end too, at that very sorrowful end. Again she is interrupting. What kind of a lady is she really? So Charlie sighed. So you know now what is sighed. Sighed is nothing but it is deep audible breath expressing sadness, is called as. With deep breath, audible breath, he was expressing his sadness, and he turned slightly in his bed and he looked at me, says the author. So Dorothy looked to me too with her pretty smile. So this lady Dorothy also looked to the author, and she was looking at him with that pretty smile, thinking that she has done a very great job. So he always gets that story wrong. Again she added that sentence. I don't know what kind of lady is she. So he always gets that story wrong, she said. Again, she was complaining about her own husband, Charlie, that always he makes this mistake by telling that there is a curve in the sky. So, with this, we have completed, that is, this lesson, the curve in the sky, which is called, which is written by James Thurber. So, you can write your own conclusion or the moral of the story at the end in your examination as what it should be. So there are some people who always try to interrupt others and pointing out their mistakes and making them annoying, making them disgusted, and then they try to finish other sentences, which is really very disgusting and very annoying for other people, and it is very inconvenient for them. So, if there is a character like this or a habit, they ought to change themselves. So, with this, we complete this lesson, that is The Curve in the Sky, which is written by James Thurber. So, in the same unit, we have the grammar part. I'm going to take the grammar part in the next video lesson, and today we are going to see another part, that is Chindu Ellamma, that is a reading passage. Chindu Ellamma, who is a Telangana artist. So you can see here Chindu Ellamma, Chindu Ellamma, Chindu Ellamma, who is the Telangana artist, and this is the grammar passage in your first year textbook. So please try to concentrate. So Chindu Ellamma, 1914 to 2005, hailed from a disadvantaged community in the town of Basara near Nizamabad in Telangana. She was given the name Saraswati at birth and belonged to a family and community which travelled from village to village, performing Chindu Bhagavatam, a folk theatre at art form. Her father suffered from near blindness, and Saraswati believed that if she dedicated her life in service to the goddess Yellamma, then perhaps her faith would be repaid and her father's sight would be restored. Indeed, over time, her father did reacquire his sight. As a sign of respect and devotion, Saraswati changed her name to Chindu Ellamma. She was married off at the age of 14, but she found that marital duties prevented her from dedicating herself completely to her art. Arrangements were made so that her husband could marry her sister while she could live a childless life, one in which she was intent on furthering Chindu Bhagavatam as an art form. Bhagavatam, considered to be the essence of all Vedas, exists in various versions, including Chindu Bhagavatam, characteristic of a nomadic community from Telangana. The name is derived from the manner of community's presentation of the art form Chindu in Telugu means jump, and as the troup's presentation involves the use of leaps and jumps, it became a title that they embraced. In the Telangana region, there are 800 Chindu Bhagavatam troupes. Each troupe is made up of 15 skilled performers, typically all male. These performers are called Chindulollu and are trained in various arts including singing, makeup, and playing musical instruments such as the harmonium, cymbals, and dholak, that is a type of drum. Chindu was one such exceptional artist who, despite leading the difficult life of a nomad, always performed with a sense of dignity and reverence towards her profession. It was her hope to make Chindu Bhagavatam popular among the masses so that it would bring recognition and respectability to her community while drawing attention to their plight as a group of people struggling to survive violent caste politics. During pre independence times, the Duras, an upper caste community, had people from lower caste into their poverty. The Duras frequently organized Chindu Bhagavatam performances in their villages as they believed doing so would ensure divine blessings and prosperity. Chindu used these events as opportunities to combine her performance with moral anecdotes and advice for the Doras in the hope that they would treat the poor with compassion. Nataraja Ramakrishna, the chairman of the Sangita Nataka Academy, was the first to introduce Chindu Yellama to broader urban audiences. As a result of this, she earned immense respect and recognition, and the story of her life remains a shining example of one dedicated to the arts. So now we are going to see about this artist, that is Chindu Elama. So this Chindu Elama, she was born in the year 1914 and she died in 2005. And she hailed from a disadvantaged community in the town of Basra. So you know what is a disadvantaged community, and she was born in this disadvantaged community of a low background in the town which is called as Basra. And this Basra, it is in Nizamabad in Telangana. She was given the name, that is, her actual name is Saraswati at birth, and she belonged to a family and community which traveled from village to village. So you know, the people who travel from village to village, or the family or the community, they are called as nomads. So performing Chindu Bhagavatam. So their job is to perform this Bhagavatam, which is called as Chindu Bhagavatam, and it is a folk theatre of art form. So this is Chindu Bhagavatam, you can see on the slide. So it is a folk theatre art form, and this Saraswati's father, her father suffered from near blindness. So this Saraswati's father, he was suffering from near blindness, and Saraswati believed that if she dedicated her life in service to the goddess Yellama, then perhaps her faith would be repaid on her father's side, would be restored. So, what was her belief? Her belief was that if I dedicate my life or my service completely to this goddess Yelama, then my father's sight will be restored. That means he will not become blind and he will get his sight back. So that was her faith in this goddess Yelama. So, indeed, over time, her father had reacquired his sight. So, according to her belief in this goddess Yellama, her father he reacquired his sight. That means he got his sight again. So, he has no more blindness. So, as a sign of respect and devotion, what did this girl Saraswati do? She changed her name to Chindu Yellama. You can see on the slide. So, like that, this girl at a very early age, she changed her name to, she dedicated her life to this Yellama and also changed her name to Chindu Yellama. She was married off at the age of 14. So when she was 14 years, she was married, but she found that marital duties prevented her. So she also thought that if I get married, there are so many duties to be performed in marriage. After getting married, children, and all those, so I can't dedicate myself completely to this goddess Alama and this Chindu Bhagavatam. So, like that, she thought, and then arrangements were made so that her husband could marry her sister. So, she told her husband, and like that, an arrangement was made that her husband could marry her sister while she could live a life of childless life. So, like that, she dedicated her life completely and she devoted her life to this goddess Alama, one in which she was intent on furthering Chindu Bhagavatam as an art form. So she performed this Chindu Bhagavatam as an art form, And then Bhagavatam considered to be the essence of all Vedas. So you know that the essence of Vedas is this Bhagavatam, and it was considered so. So exists in various versions, including Chindu Bhagavatam. So you can see that it exists in various versions, and especially including Chindu Bhagavatam. This is the characteristic of a nomadic community. So I told you nomadic community means they change from place to place. A person who changes his residence frequently is called as nomadic community. So like that you can see here. And then manner of nomadic community from Telangana. So the name is derived from the manner of the community's presentation of the art form. Chindu in Telugu means jump, and as a troops presentation involves the use of leaps and jump. So Chindu in Telugu it is called as Chindu. Chindulu, Chindulestunaventi they say. So Chindu means, the meaning of Chindu is leap and jump. It became a title that they embrace. So they embrace this title which is called as Chindu, which means jump. So in the Telangana region there are 800 Chindu Bhagavatam troops. So this you have to remember. In Telangana nearly there are 800 Chindu Bhagavatam troops. TROUPE troop. So what is this troop? Troop means any group of people working together. Working together. Any group of people working together is called as a troop. So like that there are 800 Chindu Bhagavatam troops. So each troop is made up of 15 skilled performers. So in each troop you can see 15 performance. And how are those 15 performers? They are skilled and typically all male. That you have to remember. So these performers are called Chindulolu. So these skilled performers, they are only called as Chindulolu and are trained in various arts including singing. So here you can see the Bhagavatam. So in this group there will be easily 15. Okay, so like that in each troop there are 15, or they are only called as Chindulolu and are trained in various arts including singing. And you can see the makeup, and there are also playing instruments, that is musical instruments such as harmonium, cymbals, dolak. All these are the musical instruments, drums, etc. So Chindu was one such exceptional artist who, despite leading the difficult life of a nomad, so this lady was a nomad and she was leading a very difficult life, always performed with a sense of dignity. She performed with a sense of dignity and reverence. Yes, so you know what is reverence? Is respect towards her profession. She had great respect and reverence towards her profession. It was her hope to make Chindu Bhagavatam popular among the masses so that it would bring recognition and respectability to her community. So she thought that it brings recognition and also respectability to her community while drawing attention to their plight. So plight means it is an unfortunate situation. Okay, that is called as plight, as a group of people struggling to survive. Then so these people, they are struggling to survive. Violent caste politics are also involved. So facing so many challenges, facing such a difficult life, she dedicated herself and she started performing very skillfully. So during pre-independence times, the Doras, an upper caste community, had people from lower caste tend to their property. So the upper caste people, they are called as Doras, and they had these people from lower caste. And the Doras, they frequently organized this Chindu Bhagavatam. They were very interested to watch these Chindu Bhagavatam performances in their villages, who are called as Duras, that is an upper caste community, as they believe doing so would ensure divine blessings and prosperity. So, what did these Duras or the upper caste community believe? By watching or by enjoying this Chindu Bhagavatam performances, they believe that they are going to acquire divine blessings, and not only that, they will be prosperous. So Chindu used these events as opportunities to combine her performance with moral anecdotes. So what did this Chindu Yelama do? She took these events as opportunities, and she combined her performance with moral anecdotes. So, you know what are anecdotes? A short account of real incident or person. Often it is humorous or interesting. That is called as anecdote. And advice for the Doras in the hope that they would treat the poor with compassion. And she also advised the Doras, these upper caste community people, that they have to be treated, they should treat the poor with compassion, that is with mercy. Like that, Nataraja Ramakrishna, the chairman of the Sangita Nataka Academy, was the first to introduce Chindu Yellamma. So, because of her hard work and her dedication and devotion towards this Chindu Bhagavatam, finally her hard work was given fruits, and this Nataraja Ramakrishna, who was the chairman of Sangita Nataka Academy, he was the first person to introduce Chindu Yellamma to this broader urban audiences also, not only rural audience, but she was introduced to urban, that is city audiences also. As a result of this, she earned immense respect and recognition. So after performing her Chindu Bhagavatam, she acquired very great respect and recognition from urban audiences too, and the story of her life remains a shining example of one dedicated to this art, that is Chindu Bhagavatam. So, with this, we have completed Chindu Yellamma, and in the next video, we shall try to complete soft skills and then value orientation and the grammar part. So, thank you. Thank you. ఇగో ఇది